I would like to welcome anyone who's on the phone or with us and who will be joining us on video. This is Power Women. It's a Satori roundtable, and I developed it to bring different women together each week because we're all powerful and we're all different, to combat domestic violence and human trafficking. So those are two causes that really need your help. Saving Jane is actually a group that literally gets in the battleground and they go in and rescue women. They're developing, there's a young group. They will be housing women as well. They do have a few women and some security. They do a lot of outreach, and what they do is they have a designer who makes these amazing comic books, these Japanese style comic books, and they go into the elementary schools and they train children through the comic books how to be aware of a predator, so that they're getting the information in a way that they can understand it, and it's fun, but it's penetrating. And then they have different levels, different legs. They have, the group that goes out and rescues women, and then they're starting to house the women there. Garden of Hope is in Queens, New York, and they are very special. They specialize largely, but not exclusively, in Asian women. And they're one of the only rescues that has 10 dialects within languages, Asian languages, Japanese, Chinese, Korean, Vietnamese, and then there's several subdialects, so that the women can find someone who can understand them, which has been a problem if they were Asian. Many times there was nowhere they could go, but there would be no one to understand. So this group specializes in understanding and doing outreach. They address domestic violence. So it's really great. So I'm going to ask everyone now to introduce themselves. So first we're going to start with Kacey.
Hi, I'm Kacey. I am here in the Hudson Valley, the prettiest little part of New York State. And I am a radio host for many, many years and a podcaster for the last 10. And my show is called Shine On, Inspiration for Health and Happiness. I do a lot of public speaking. I do a lot of women's retreats and symposiums. And these topics I'm writing down: Saving Jane, Garden of Hope. These are two of my next people I'll interview on my
Yes.
show. So thank you, Lydia. So that's me here in the Hudson Valley.
Thank you, Kacey. And Dr. Elizabeth.
Yes, hi. Thanks so much for having me, Lydia.
You're welcome.
I'm really honored to be among such a wonderful crowd. I am a board-certified naturopathic doctor. I run a nationwide dietary therapy clinic where I create customized anti-inflammatory diets. I am very focused on inflammation, and especially how we can address inflammation in all of its forms in the body, including autoimmunity, through targeted dietary changes. And I also speak around the country, and I have an upcoming podcast that will be debuting at some point. And I have a cookbook called Glorious One Pot Meals.
Great cookbook. You two should get together. Dr. Elizabeth, she's great. Go ahead.
I'm writing down all of her information. One Pot Meals.
Yep, Glorious One Pot Meals. It's a
Yarnel.
It's a great way to get healthy meals on the table in under an hour with very little effort. It's actually a method that I invented and patented and introduced in this cookbook. So that's kind of all about me. Thanks.
And you specialize in inflammation and people with autoimmune diseases, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes. I myself have multiple sclerosis, and so that's been a big part of my story and my journey, and obviously my focus and my research as well.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Elizabeth. And Madam Exquis.
Hi, Lydia.
Hi.
Hi, everyone. I'm so happy to be here, join this wonderful and powerful woman. I'm Madam X. I live in Los Angeles. I'm from Colombia. I do healing work. I do different modalities of healing work. One of those are breath work, theta healing, sacred activations, integrated energy therapy that works with angels too. And right now I'm introducing and being a pioneer with the Johnny Egg practice in Colombia, and also all my therapies and practices. I'm so happy to share any knowledge that is right here right now with me.
Thank you. And those are jade eggs that you're bringing to Colombia, right?
Yes.
Okay, so I don't know if everyone's familiar with the jade eggs. Yes. So you found a new market and you realized that they didn't have them there, and so you're bringing them. That's great.
Yes, and not many people, almost nobody knows about the practice of this Johnny. We call Johnny to the sacred, our sexual area. So it's like our sacred place, and it's this way of being like having a healthy way or style of life in that area that usually as a women we only give a thought about it when it's too late, when we're already having sickness or we're having a problem. So my idea is all about preventing any issue with that.
That's great. Thank you. And I'm Dr. Tranquility, Lydia. What do I do? My gosh, it's so much. I'm a practitioner mainly. So I'm a mind-body medicine practitioner and a botanical medicine practitioner and psych. So you throw them in a pot, you shake it up, and that's what comes out. While I was ill, went on for quite a while, I became a publicist. So I do PR in my part-time life. It's very exciting. Laurie?
Hi, how are you?
Okay, we have Dr. Laurie Neadel on the phone with us. Laurie, would you tell us a little bit about you and about your amazing book?
Oh, thank you so much. Well, I'm Dr. Laurie, and I have a practice in psychotherapy and coaching here in New York City and on Long Island. And I help people who have had disasters or catastrophic events, and big unexpected sudden losses in their lives, to be able to work through it and to transform it into a kind of a springboard for growth. I spent the first 20 years of my career in the news business. I was a writer, producer at CBS News, and I was a field reporter in the war zone in South America. And it sensitized me to the fact that people who've been through these sudden losses need long-term support. So when I changed careers and opened my office in 1991, I chose to focus on this area of trauma and acute stress and post-traumatic stress. And I've been very privileged to be able to work with some amazing people over the years. I have a new book out. It's called The 5 Gifts, yes. Discovering Hope, Healing, and Strength When Disaster Strikes. I'm really honored that Dan Rather, who's my mentor, has written the foreword to the book. And because of losing my own home during Hurricane Sandy, I was given these 5 gifts when I was meditating, and I was told that they would help people to heal and recover from any kind of big loss. And these 5 gifts are humility, patience, empathy, forgiveness, and growth. And over time, we find that humility helps us to accept the unacceptable, and it helps us to come to terms with suffering. That the Buddha says that suffering is part of our human journey, not all of our journey, but part of our journey. And patience is the gift that helps us when we're still hurting and we think we should be over it, because the heart has its own timetable for healing. And empathy is the gift of connection and community. Forgiveness usually has to begin with forgiving ourselves, because we couldn't prevent whatever happened. And growth is what helps us to transform the event into, as we would say, like a learning experience, or something that, gives us a new sense of meaning and purpose. And so those are the 5 gifts.
Laurie, do you see any similarities in between the 5 gifts and Sixth Sense, your first bestseller?
Well, it's an interesting question. I think that the fact that the 5 gifts came to me kind of through a spiritual practice, which is meditation, and it was certainly, you could call it a sixth sense experience, because it didn't come from my conscious mind. But we would say that, that intuition is the sudden, spontaneous knowing of something without the use of reasoning. And so that inner voice that spoke to me may have been an angel, a spirit guide, my higher self, my inner wisdom. I don't really know what the source is. I'm not the kind of person who would say God spoke to me, but some higher wisdom spoke to me, and that would definitely be a sixth sense experience.
Okay, that's amazing. And we were both 9/11 early responders.
Yes, that's right.
A lot of, and we're former office mates. Disclosure, Laurie is one of my mentors. So,
thank you. My privilege.
My privilege. So you've also worked with the kids in Park Lane, correct?
No. I've never worked with the kids in Parkland. I was part of a debriefing team. We were called in to work with the teachers and the first responders and the staff at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School. I've given workshops to the teachers and also to the community in Parkland. I've also done some work there, as well as with the Miami police force. I'm part of an organization that does critical incident stress management with first responders when they go out on a disturbing call, to kind of teach them about, educate them about how to take care of themselves and how to recognize the signs of acute stress, the physical signs, and the mental signs as well, which can be difficulty concentrating, difficulty sleeping, loss of appetite. There's a whole range of indicators and symptoms, and we help people to accept and acknowledge that, it's okay to be upset when something unspeakable happens. It doesn't make you weak or unprofessional. So I've been very privileged to be part of this movement, especially in Florida, where I've been based for the last few years.
Wow, that is amazing. Thank you for your work.
Oh, it's my honor. The man I work with, Paul Schweinler, he's so gifted and dedicated. He's been doing this work for 38 years, so it's such a privilege to kind of be his apprentice.
Oh, amazing. Kacey, I'm going to throw it to you. We're talking about the 5 gifts. So is there some situation, without disclosing, to anything too personal, is there some situation that you've come out of that you've been able to extract knowledge and share it with the rest of the people through your site and your healing work and your presentations, etc.?
Yeah. As a matter of fact, that's why I started speaking. Here in the Hudson Valley of New York, I've been on the radio for over 30 years, and everyone thinks they know me, right? And that's lovely. But what they don't know is, while they were listening to that chirpy, happy voice every morning, behind that was a really difficult struggle. And what an interpersonal, I guess you'd now call it office bullying. We didn't know what to call it 15 years ago. But I was in this very difficult situation. And the word that Dr. Laurie just used, humility. When you come to this humble place, like, I can't fix this, I don't know what to do. You know, when you really come to your knees in humility and say, I got nothing, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
That's where the grace can come in, when you find,
That's right.
stop trying to fix it,
Yes.
right?
Absolutely. Beautifully said.
Thank you.
Wonderful.
Yes. So Lydia, I apologize, but I'm kind of short of breath.
Okay.
So
Laurie?
I hope that I can meet everybody again. I came down with bronchitis a couple of days ago, so my apologies, and thank you so much for having me with you.
Thank you for the 5 gifts.
Thank you.
We
Great.
wish you a
all.
speedy recovery.
Thank you so much. Thank you all. Okay.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Good night.
Bye.
Good night.
Dr. Elizabeth, to you. I know with MS, there's certainly circumstances that have come up that you've been able to extract some information from that now you use to help other people. What would it be? One thing.
The biggest thing that I have figured out with MS and other autoimmune issues is that they're really not a mystery. And if we look in the right place for each person who is suffering from this kind of inflammation, we can find the triggers. And if we can find the triggers, then we can eliminate them. No triggers, no inflammation. And if there's no inflammation, there's no symptoms. So this is something I practice on myself as well, and on the patients who come to my clinic. And I write about it extensively online and in my upcoming book. But I really think that the medical community has been looking in the wrong places for these kinds of inflammatory issues. And the answer is much simpler, but it is means or a story of doing the detective work, and that can be a little tricky. So it's helpful to have the help of a practitioner who's experienced in doing that kind of detective work to help you identify what your own personal inflammatory triggers are.
Right.
For some of us, they are the most innocuous things. For myself, one of my most inflammatory triggers is lettuce. Lettuce!
Wow.
Lettuce. What could be more innocuous than lettuce, right? But man, I eat lettuce and all of a sudden I'm wobbly on my feet. I can't walk straight. I can't trust myself not to fall down. So I can really clearly see the effects of lettuce on my body. Obviously, lettuce doesn't have this effect on everybody else's body. For my son, some of his most inflammatory triggers are broccoli, garlic, and lemon. Who would have thunk? Broccoli, garlic, and lemon. Are those not like 3 of the healthiest items you could even conceive of? But not for him. They cause him migraines, they cause him constipation, they cause him IBS symptoms, all sorts of issues. But that's...
Sure, he's thrilled that you're sharing that.
You know, I kicked him out of my office a little earlier while I was on the phone with a patient, and I was telling her a story about him, and he started commenting from the peanut gallery, and I'm like, "You're out, get out." He's now 16, so he's not as pliant as he once was when I first started down this path.
Well, I remember that day that you and I were on the phone, and I had and I've been having some issues with their holdovers from when I was ill, with just being clear. Kacey, you said it to me, Lydia, what are you saying to me? You know, it's just been unclear. And I literally was on the phone with Elizabeth and I shut down. I could not think. I couldn't text, which was, I think, a little bit of anxiety, but I couldn't text for at least 2 hours. Like it took me, I was holding the phone and trying to peck at the words.
So it would be very interesting, Lydia, to do your food sensitivity testing and identify what it was. Sometimes it's something that we're eating all the time and we don't even think about it. Food sensitivity reactions or food sensitivities can be dose dependent and delayed by up to 4 days after ingestion. So that means that sometimes you might have like a handful of blueberries one day and you're fine, but if you have a handful of blueberries 3 days in a row, now you might have symptoms.
Right.
Or it might be the amount of red food dye that is on a Starlight mint, you know, those white mints that they serve at restaurants with little red swirl, that's just a red swirl, that could be too much red food dye for that person. I know that much red food dye will make my son throw up.
Wow.
So
Okay.
it's really, it can be kind of tricky, which is why it's really helpful to work with a professional like a certified LEAP therapist who can
Well,
help
I'm
you
going to
figure
call
this
you.
out. I hope you do.
Yeah. I'm
Because
gonna
that was a kind of a scary incident that happened while we were on the phone together.
I froze, my brain just shut, it stopped working. Like there was no brain. I couldn't form words. I couldn't type, and I couldn't speak. So it was crazy, but yes, I'm going to be in touch with you. And Madam Exquisite, how about you? 5 gifts. So you have different life experiences and you've come up with a protocol or treatment plan. What would be one thing that you would use to help other people? You know, what would you tell some of these women in recovery with your work? Because I know you do breathing work specifically. So what would be one thing?
One thing is to be aware of the powers we have. This, when we get sick, when we have a very dark time in our lives, sometimes it is not just to make us go down, it's also to help us to be aware and to find our own power. In my case, I was studying law back there in Colombia, and I was having, every time I had my final exams, I was having these inflammations and like very, very bad feelings in my skin started to swell and grow, and it was like crazy. I looked totally different, and I couldn't put my clothes on because I was so big, so itchy, painful, so annoyed. It helped me to go out of the system. The regular things, I like the priest went to put, like to bless me, and I went to the doctors. Nobody could tell anything. Nobody gave me any answers. They only were treating my symptoms. So I started looking out what else was available. That's how I found theta healing. And then my whole journey and my whole career changed. Then I started discovering these abilities, that I had these talents, that I could see, that I could hear, that I could feel without the physical senses, but having all this inner power or inner talents I never got to explore. But because of the sickness or because of the bad times, it helped me to that. And that's what I bring to my work, to help others to find that without having to go from this to the struggle, without having to go through a sickness, through a dark time, that it's there available to all of us. We don't have to go through the pain and through the bad times to find that power and that gifts that we have.
Now you've given up your studies. You were studying the law in Colombia, right? And you've given that up to do this full time, correct?
Yes.
That's amazing.
Totally. I never imagined that this would have happened. I never saw myself doing any of this. I thought this was like witchcraft, and something like, I was so Christian and it was very limited at that time. So I thought like this was something that God won't like it,
Yeah.
But thankfully, my whole world changed. And when it's time and it's your path, no matter how much you push against it, you are gonna be, guided through the path you gotta walk, you gotta go.
Yes. Well, I know for me, domestic violence was an issue because I'm a survivor. And that's why I wanted to help women who were dealing with it.